3?
Killed them.
Killed him. So making war simply means fights or what?
Conflict.
Battles,
Conflict.
attacks. He picks a fight. He's the aggressor. Okay? He causes strife. So he picks a fight. He makes war with them. He goes after them. What did other people try to do prior to this? What did it say earlier last week when we were studying this? The enemies, if anyone desires to harm them in verse 5.
Fire will come out of them.
Okay, so harm could fit in with the same idea, but the Antichrist, does he know he can battle them and win? Don't know. But he does, and what is the result in number 2? Who overcomes them? What's the word used here? He conquers them. He is victorious. What name, boy's name, is the Greek word for this? Nicholas. Victorious. That's the word here. He defeats them. He subdues them. He is victorious over them. He overpowers them. Others have tried, and fire came out of their mouth and devoured their enemies. Why that's the weapon they use, I don't know. Is that fire laser? Is it a laser weapon that just toasts them right on the spot? Don't know. But it happens. It will happen. And the third thing then, ultimately, they're not just overcome. They aren't just defeated and subdued. They are killed. And this carries the idea of being
Destroyed.
Destroyed them.
destroyed would be the extreme of it. And Linda?
Caused to die.
Caused to die. The general word just means that they were slain or put to death. So how does he do that? How does he kill them? Why is he successful? Lots left out there, don't know. But he's allowed to take them out because their testimony is
True.
finished. God has a purpose for them. He's exposing people because they lay there for 3.5 days. That's exposing the hearts of people, that you're letting a human being lay out in the street. Then they're resurrected. They don't just go up, they stand on their feet. And so we're going to look at that next, right? So what are some other names for the beast as we kind of go to sidetrack a little bit? 1 John 2, 2 John 1. There are many antichrists, but he is the Antichrist.
False prophet.
Okay. Then we get down 2 Thessalonians 2, 3, and 8. He's called,
Lawless one.
okay, man of lawless and lawless one, man of lawlessness. Son of destruction. You want those names? You want those, you use them for your child's names?
No.
Hey, Lawless. There was a movie by that, wasn't there? Lawless, something. Old movie. How about Daniel 7 and Daniel 7? What names come out of there? Little horn?
Yeah, the horn. I saw that.
Yeah, little horn.
Little horn.
And beast is another term that's used there. The fourth beast is the Roman Empire, but the term beast is used for him as well. And so he's the little horn, implying that he's maybe not over a large empire, but he's very, very powerful. Because there are 10 horns or 10 kings that are going to reign, and he's going to pull 3 of them out by the roots. They picture kings or kingdoms with the horns, and what's the other term? Well, just use the word kingdoms. 7 kingdoms and 10 horns.
I got you.
The 10 horns are 10 kings. But they picture that because a horn was a symbol of power. You put that on a beast of burden, or you put that on a rhinoceros or something, whatever we want to pick today. But it's powerful and dangerous. And so, but his is little. Why is it little? We're not really studying the Antichrist tonight, but you kind of go, okay, is he going to be over a smaller empire? Is that how he's going to reign? Some think he's going to follow in the shoes of Antiochus Epiphanes. What empire was he over? Northeast of Israel, Syria was the empire. And it was a small empire. What would that empire be today? Syria. It's still there.
Yeah, it's going.
You have the Kurds to the northern part of Syria, but you still have Syria there. Damascus was its capital. And you're kind of going, can someone rise up from there and conquer the world? Can the world fall after somebody? Well, Antiochus Epiphanes was one of those who trampled through Israel back in the day. So it's hard to know. But here's his names, variety of names. What will happen to their dead bodies as we go back to looking at the dead witnesses? Okay, and what's the great city here? Jerusalem. How do we know that? It tells you two things. One, it's the city in which Christ was crucified. He's actually crucified just outside the city, right on the edge there, but now it is in the city. Today, the city has grown. And what's the second thing? That we know it's not Sodom and it's not Egypt. How were those terms being used in our passage? That gives us the clue. Mystically. You look that word up, 4153, and it meant, okay, spiritually is the main meaning of the word, but it carries the idea of a figurative, metaphorical, symbolical way that Egypt and that Jerusalem's real similar to Egypt and really similar to Sodom. He refers to them that way. Judah and Israel are called Sodom and Gomorrah in the book of Ezekiel. Your sister Sodom is one of the terms he uses there. And so they're using it spiritually. We know that it's not literal here. Spiritually, it's Egypt and Sodom, but it's where our Lord was crucified, which means literally it is the city of Jerusalem. Okay, you understand how that works? That I'm not twisting the scriptures, I'm letting the scriptures speak for themselves. So it ends up being pretty straightforward when you look at it that way. What two things will the earth's unbelievers do with their dead bodies? How do they display them?
Look at their dead bodies.
Okay, they'll look at their dead bodies for how long?
3.5 days.
3.5 days, and that word look, 991, means? Okay, a couple of them slowly. Which? Gaze. Gaze.
Stare.
Stare. Watch.
Take heed.
Be observant.
Take heed.
Take heed. Okay, they may be watching in that way, where they're paying attention. They're contemplating, discerning, perceiving. That's what this word means. And when you look up this word, they'll look, it's just the word blepo. But this carries the idea of a special contemplation, an earnest gazing at their bodies. They're staring at them. Almost like you walk up to when they tranquilize a wild beast, and then they're carefully going up and they kind of poke it with a stick. They want to make sure it's really out before they collar it or draw blood to figure out what's wrong with it, or take a wire off of a leg like we watched. A couple of my grandkids love to watch those animal shows. And they had to neutralize or tranquilize this little baby elephant, and mom is standing about not quite 100 yards away watching them. And they know at any moment she'll attack. But they were helping the baby. They got the wire off. They let the baby up, and the mother tolerated them because they're in a preserve, so she's seen them enough. But they said maybe out in the wild it wouldn't happen that way. So they're kind of looking at them, observing, discerning, perceiving, earnestly gazing and contemplating them. I can almost picture them coming up and poking them to make sure, are they really dead or are they just playing? After 3.5 years of resisting. So how about the second one? How do they dishonor them? Okay, not permit their dead bodies to be laid in a tomb, and the word permit, 863 goes down a little different route. It means allow. It can mean allow. To yield. Okay, to yield something. It can mean that. It can mean to release, tolerate. But what's the word normally used to describe? 863.
Come and go. Or go away.
Okay, you got that from there?
Send away.
Okay, I don't know if you got the right number. 863, it fits under, I got to make sure now you guys are throwing a curveball at me. I slept too much.
You got
Yeah, you look up the word forgive in Vines and it's 863.
Oh, weird.
So what it's carrying here is, and there it means to send for, send away, denotes besides its other meanings to remit or forgive debts, sins, whatever. But what he's trying to do here, they'll not release their bodies to be buried, is what they're really trying to bring up. They'll not remit them, or they're kind of like holding back forgiveness. They don't ever want to bury them, because burial is a polite way of treating somebody. Leaving their bodies lay out on the street is a way to what? Dishonor, disrespect, humiliate. And so I gave you some verses to look up, and you saw that happen to some of these people. Deuteronomy 21:23, even with a criminal, what were you supposed to do with his body? Bury on the same day, because that was put into the law. That was normal. You didn't let bodies lay out. Who's letting them lay out? The nation of Israel. They're in Jerusalem. It's the Jews who aren't following their own law. They're so angry, so disrespectful, and want to so dishonor them. How about 1 Kings 14? They're going to put their bodies out. What was going to happen to them because of the calamity?
Dogs will eat their flesh.
Dogs are going to eat them, and birds are going to eat them.
Birds will eat them also.
Okay? Dishonorable way to die. Happens in war because you can't get back to do anything to the bodies. They're just laying out there on the battlefield, if you lost, especially. But that was another one. How about 2 Kings 9? Who was involved there?
Jezebel.
Jezebel. And what happened to her?
She was trampled and became dung on the face of the earth.
Okay, she became dung because she was eaten by
Oh, yeah.
dogs. What was the only things left of her?
Dogs,
Her skull,
in her hand.
her hands, and her feet. I guess the dogs don't want to eat those things. But they went back out. The king went back out to bury her. He just left her there not very long, and God moved in because what had been prophesied? The dogs were going to eat her. So that had already been spoken of. So God had dogs ready, and they moved right in, and they tore her to shreds. How about the last one? It's kind of out of order, but I think it fits best. Let's read this one. 2 Samuel 21. Turn over to that. Remember all the first and seconds in the Old Testament? They're all together. 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Chronicle. They're not alphabetical, the opposite. SKC. This is just ways to remember how to learn your books of the Bible. So if you find one, you've found them all in the Old Testament. 2 Samuel chapter 21, verses 10 to 14. Someone like to read that? And it's Rizpah.
And Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it for herself on the rock, from the beginning of harvest until it rained on them from the sky. And she allowed neither the birds of the sky to rest on them by day, nor the beasts of the field by night. When it was told David what Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, the concubine of Saul, had done, then David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son from the men of Jabesh Gilead, who had stolen them from the open square of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hanged them on the day the Philistines struck down Saul in Gilboa. And he brought up the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son from there, and they gathered the bones of those who had been hanged. They buried the bones of Saul and Jonathan his son in the country of Benjamin in Zelah, in the grave of Kish his father. Thus they did all that the king commanded, and after that God was moved by prayer for the land.
Okay, so God responded to them doing the right thing. The concubine respected them. The Bethshan, remember that?
Yeah.
We went swimming at Bethshan. It was very hot, and so they let us swim, and the feet nibbled on your toes. That was a strange place. I wanted to know how big the fish were, to know if I was going to lose one of my toes. But anyway, no, the water was too churned up. Wasn't very clean water. I don't know what was in it. I think it was chemicals, or not chemical. I think it was what?
How do you know it was fish?
Well, they told us it was fish. That's all I know. If I'd gone fishing, I would have pulled one up really fast because we were standing on this little. It was water dropped, and then we're standing on this little ledge, and it drops again. But the second ledge was underwater, and our feet were hanging over the edge. We were getting ready to dive in, and then all of a sudden you felt the little nipples on your feet. It's like, what is that? Anyway, you had to be there. So, but I know where Bethshan is, and they had to steal the bodies. Remember what happened to them initially? What did the Philistines do with their bodies when they finally conquered?
They displayed them.
Yeah, they displayed them,
On the side
and so they had to get them.
building.
And it was very, very cruel. Again, that's how the world treats people.
With salt cut off his head. And
Yeah. But here, we got one microphone here, Linda. I don't know if it's working. And They may be working and may just be rebellious. So that they display them, they dishonor them, they don't follow the law about dead bodies. So how will the earth dwellers respond to their deaths? What's involved with jubilation? And that simply means be glad. So the second one, celebration. This one is being glad, joyful, delighting. What is the focus of this first one?
Happy.
Happiness. It's an internal. You're just excited. It's kind of what makes you jump up and down. It just makes your day. Internal happiness. How about the celebration?
Make merry.
Okay, then they're going to make merry. This word means party, exulting.
Have a sense of victory.
Okay, enjoying their victory. So there, but it's an external partying is also what I wrote down there. And then presentation. They're going to send gifts to one another. This means to dispatch presents.
Spontaneous giving.
It's kind of like your grandkids live in another state. What do you do at Christmas time? You dispatch presents. You send them gifts. That's all it's talking about. All of a sudden they're sending stuff to each other and they're just having a ball. This 3.5 years was horrible. What was so bad about it? You're seeing it today in the United States.
Well, unlike in the United States, if you said something bad about them, you died.
If you try to harm them.
If you tried to harm.
Okay.
If you tried to harm.
So I don't know what if your speech was considered harmful or not, but what in America, when you try to speak out against sin, try to expose something that somebody's done, politician, anybody, what happens? What does the media do with you? They go after you big time. And so you're going to see, here's 3.5 years of this. You can imagine the big tech trying to censor you and censor you and censor you, and they go on for years, and they can't shut you up. They can't make it stop or go away.
That's the extreme, though, that they're sending presents to each other over that.
See, what it's exposing is the heart of man, which is deceitful and desperately wicked. They hate God, and they hate anybody representing him. And I'd love to get a tape of their messages. Even just 5 minutes would be fun to hear what they're going to be saying. Are they going to have the media? Are they going to have megaphones? Or how is their message going to get out? Are they all of a sudden going to pop into a newscast and their little faces are going to show up and it say, "Hello, it's me, Elijah, and I got a message for you today," and they try to push buttons and make it go away. They can't. I don't know how this is going to work, but it's going to irritate them for 3.5 years, and they're not going to be squelched. So if there is multimedia out there, some kind of high tech, I think they will be interjecting into it, hacking into it. That'd be a good way to put it. That's a Jack Abner thing, but yep, they're sending gifts. Why will they respond this way toward the two witnesses?
Because the prophets had tormented them.
And this word tormented means tortured, harassed,
Stress.
buffeted, just severely distressed, and did what? Vexed. Okay, another good word. Well, some of their best friends were taken out by fire. Yeah, that probably didn't help any either. I forgot about that one. How many get killed that way before they wise up? Pretty stupid. Hey, Joe got burned up yesterday because he tried to hurt them. He went after him with a machete. Why don't you take a gun and go get him? Burn up.
The other guy will say, "I'm faster, so I'll try with mine."
Or I'm a marksman from 1,000 yards. And it always reminds me of those guys with Elijah that they kept sending bands of 50. And finally the third guy went, "Nah, not me. I'm not that stupid." So I encourage you to read your Old Testament. You'll see what's going on there. But they got burned up, and then all of a sudden the third man, the guy comes crawling on his knees practically, humbly pleading with him, saying, "I'm just doing my job," in my interpretation. And so he let him live, and he sent back a message with the guy. So here you have some very upset individuals on planet Earth. What will happen to the witnesses after 3.5 days? They've been laying there, displayed, humiliated.
Breath of life from God.
Okay, power, the breath of life of God came into them. That means they
Spirit of life.
came alive or resurrected. That's all I'm looking for there. Then what's their position? How do I know they resurrected?
Stood to their feet.
They stood to their feet. That means they were standing, obviously alive.
Alive.
Dead people don't stand up. Don't know if they started talking again, and everybody starts screaming at them. I don't know what happened at that point, but I don't get the impression, because remember it said their message was finished, their witness was finished. So they stood on their feet. This is what stands out to me. Everybody wants to tell you the gospel is the what? What is the gospel? It's good news, but what is the gospel of Jesus Christ? The death and resurrection. But oftentimes I say the death, burial, and resurrection. I don't know why they don't say the appearances. Why do they leave out appearances, but they always want to put in the burial? Why is the burial put in there? Because we don't bury live people. He was dead, that's why he got buried. Burial's not the gospel. The good news isn't that he got buried. The good news is he died. So the proof is he was buried. The good news again is that he resurrected. The evidence for that is his appearances to more than 500 at one time. You don't have 500 people hallucinating at the same time. Hopefully you don't have more than one. But so that's what he's doing here. Their breath of life comes into them. How do they know? They stood up. God gives an obvious indicator to those people standing there that they're alive. How long were they standing there? Long enough for fear to fall upon them. Long enough for the message to get out, because then the world watches them do what? Yeah, watch them ascend. So you look up the word great fear fell upon them, how the earth dwellers responded. This word means they were terrified. Dreadful. Greatly alarmed. Apprehensive. They had great anxiety. You can pick out those words in there. This is what's hitting them, because they're basically saying after 3.5 years and having this great celebration, this great rejoicing, this great making merry, and all of a sudden they're alive again. It's like, oh no.
Scared spitless.
Now what? Even the Antichrist can't permanently kill them. Jim?
That's pretty amazing when you think of Romans 1, where these people have suppressed the truth, so they know it's true. They know God is there. Nobody on earth can deny God exists.
Yeah, there's gotta be a oh moment.
There's going to be oh boy, this is not good for me.
And when we get a little further along, when they see Christ coming, they don't repent, they don't submit, they gather the armies of the earth together to take him on.
Yep.
So they're not really, the oh no isn't so much them saying, I made a mistake. It's saying, I'm in trouble. Yeah.
That's what I mean by that.
Yeah, and I know. So I just want to differentiate between the two. So this is what's going on here, and they're still that way. They are defiant. What did they hear from heaven? Verse 12.
Loud voice.
Loud voice. That word literally in English is what we use as megaphone. Megaphone is the Greek, 2 words. Loud is mega, and phone is where we get phonograph or voice or sound. Ron?
It struck me, and I don't know why before, but a lot of the voices, or most of the voices, are loud.
Yeah, they are.
That, they're talking about any voice that comes from heavens or wherever, that it's always loud.
Well, everybody's gotta hear it.
Even us deaf people, right? So what did he do when he was on the Mount of Transfiguration and God spoke? Does that describe it the same way? I'm just curious now. Nope, just says a voice out of the cloud saying, "This is my beloved son." So,
But a lot of the Revelation ones are loud voices.
so that may have only been for Peter, James, and John, so you didn't have to speak loudly. But these are heard, and that's a good observation. Many times it's very loud. Angels are loud, God is loud. These voices come out that way. And what'd you say, Beth? Okay. You look so cute in that little hat.
I was thinking the same
Yeah, she's
thing.
got a big ball back there.
So what did they hear from heaven? A loud voice. What did it command?
Come up.
Come up.
Okay, that is a command. What kind of command is it? Anybody look it up?
Stern command.
It's an aorist. So he's not putting in a time in there. He's leaving the time out. It's active.
Aorist, imperative, active, second person.
So he's just giving them a general command here that's leaving it kind of wide open. And it's not passive. That's the other thing. I would expect this to be a passive, where God is doing it to them. You know, they're passively receiving something that makes them come up. It's active. Almost the impression that you get is like they could move up themselves. Don't quote me. Don't write it down and tell anybody that's what it says. But it's just funny that it's in an active voice to them. So like they have an opportunity at that point. They've now resurrected. If it's Elijah and Enoch, they have never died. If it's Moses, I don't know how to explain that. But Lazarus, Dorcas, Tabitha, there were others who died twice. So I don't know how that works. But in this case, I get the impression here, and it's only an impression. If I could stop the tape for a second, I would, and say, it maybe they have their own ability to obey that command and to come up. So anyway, regardless, what happened to the witnesses?
They went up.
They went up into heaven. Why? In a cloud, or the cloud. You had to think a little bit with this one. How did Jesus go up in Acts 1:9?
In the cloud.
Does it say the cloud or the clouds or a cloud with Acts 1:9?
Our cloud received him out of their sight.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Oh, I thought you were reading it. Okay, in 1:9, he was lifted up while they were looking on, and a cloud received him out of their sight. So this one says the cloud. Thought that was interesting. Almost like it's a shuttle bus picking them up.
Shuttle cloud.
Yeah, shuttle cloud.
So what did you say there in the cloud?
I haven't got your answers yet. Why in the cloud?
I said transformation.
Okay.
If he's in the cloud, they can't see what's going on.
Okay, it may work as camouflage, because in Jesus' case, he would have kept going and going and going. As far as the human eye, they took him into the clouds and they didn't let him see how much further he went.
I just felt it was God's way of taking them up because
Okay,
Jesus did.
how are we going to be taken up in 1 Thessalonians 4?
Be able to meet Christ in there.
Okay, what's it say about clouds? 1 Thessalonians 4.
In the cloud. We'll meet him in the cloud. In the cloud.
The dead in Christ shall rise first, into verse 16. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So part of this, all of them, Christ's ascension, us and the rapture, these two witnesses, what do the clouds do that I just explained, that the tomb, the witnesses, what does that do?
Hides the body.
Okay, it can hide it. And that's kind of what Paul just brought up. But what's the other thing it does, though? It makes it more realistic. It isn't some phantom thing that we're seeing. They're actually going up high enough that they're actually entering into the clouds that are right above my head. Those are literal. The people going into them are also literal. It might be trying to bring out that idea. I'm not saying it's a primary reason, but I'm saying it may be part of it. So I just put in here literal/physical ascension from earth. Just like raptured believers and the ascended Christ.
Say that again, please.
I just said it's a literal physical ascension from earth. He's trying to bring out to them that they really are going up physically, which is what Christ did. It's what the rapture does. It's what they're going to do. A literal/physical ascension from earth. That doesn't make me right. I'm just asking. I ask these questions when I make up these guides, and then I go in and try to study it myself. Sometimes I can't find an answer to my own question.
But there's a difference. The raptured believers
Check.
don't instantly go into a cloud and then go up. They go straight up and then enter into the cloud. So it's a difference.
Okay, how does this word?
Which one? This says the cloud.
But they went up into heaven in the cloud. So are they on the cloud? Is that what he's trying to say? Is that how you're implying it? Like the cloud took them up? I don't think that's what it's trying to say here. And in the cloud is verse 12.
Means of transportation.
And it's, yeah, transportation. It's just in. It's not the word for on. They went up into the heaven in the cloud. So again, yeah, English just kind of makes it harder for us to understand how this is working here. But I think the result is the same. Christ went into the clouds, into a cloud. We go into the clouds, a plural, in 1 Thessalonians 4. They are caught up in the cloud. So it may be similar. Don't know. When it happens, we may get a viewing if you're dead. If you're still on earth, you also may get a viewing. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know who's going to be covering it. I don't think I'm going to be over in Jerusalem, though, at this point. It won't be a good place to be. Pat.
So, I've been trying to, when is this all taking place? Because we finished chapter 9, which was the trumpets, which is after the rapture, and all that's going on. So now 10 and 11 are added information. So is this happening like during the horses, all the horses, or after what your chart shows is during the great tribulation? Is it during the horse, while all that turmoil is going
Okay,
on?
when
all
did
of
my
that-
chart say they were?
Your chart shows 2 witnesses right at the beginning.
Yeah, not the Great Tribulation.
Right.
The first
so-
half of the 70th
Right,
week.
so it shows here, but
After
I'm
the day
feeling
of the
like
Lord.
this is all happening during the Great Tribulation. So it's happening during all the horses.
After the great day.
Depending on when the seals are broken. See, all of that is not given a timeline. It's not, you didn't tell you how long it takes, it didn't tell you when it happens. And so I can't answer you because I can't put things into a timeline when there isn't one. The 2 witnesses, it gives you no indications. When you get into chapter 11 and you go back up to verse 3 when this starts,
Yeah,
there's nothing there.
right.
He just says, I'll grant authority to my 2 witnesses. He tells you how long they're going to prophesy, but it didn't tell you when they're going to start and end. So that's the problem with this. We want to lock it down. So the only way I lock it down is what happens to them when the Antichrist comes out of the abyss. He makes war with them, overcomes them, kills them. That's when they die. What happens at that point with the Antichrist? The whole earth is going to worship him. So it's not the end of the 70th week.
Right.
It implies it's what gives him authority to act with the Great Tribulation. I'm going the wrong way to you guys, backwards. But that's why I think it's the first 3.5 years of the 70th week. God's trying to get Israel's attention. Then he dies in there somehow. I don't know when he dies and how long he's dead, how long he's in the abyss. But he comes out of the abyss, he kills them, and then the world worships him. 13:3, 13:12, 13:14. They wonder at the one that's come out, the false prophet, causes them to wonder, causes them to make a statue to him, to worship him, all of that kind of stuff. 2 Thessalonians 2, where he puts himself in the temple of God, declares himself to be God, receives worship, seems to tie in with that. All of that seems to me to be the second half of the 70th week. That's just me.
Right.
But I can't prove that.
And I'm just trying to picture this happening, these 2 witnesses going up in the cloud, is happening before the rapture. So all us, those believers that are still, all the earth is seeing this
Potentially.
ascension in the clouds.
But it depends on the persecution. You may be hiding out in some cave
Yeah.
and you see nothing. You'll be sitting there waiting on God to feed you, waiting on God to deliver you, or trusting that when they come to get you that God is in control when they execute you.
So I want to correct myself, I think. I think I said all the earth, or is it just those in Jerusalem are seeing this?
Physically, it has to be in a small location.
Yeah.
Right,
It's in the Jerusalem area, they're seeing these ascend.
right. But they die in Jerusalem,
Yeah,
in the great city.
yeah.
So we know that. So what you're doing is you're grabbing things, and there aren't very many things on the 2 witnesses. You're looking at it. I gave you a handout in your biblical eschatology notebook. There's a handout in there just on 2 witnesses. And you can look at some things that, everything I could possibly find on them, I put in there. And I can't remember all of it. I'm trying to cover the text here, not anything that might be outside of that. And my memory is getting worse and worse as I get older. This is a good timing for me to stop preaching.
So is the rest of the world gonna be able to see this through
CNN.
TV?
Potentially.
Assuming we have internet
Yeah, assuming that's still functioning, or something new
or something.
that's even different that comes only through your phones. I don't know what they're going to have out there. But possibly they want to see them dead. That 3.5 days will be broadcast. Their 3.5 years might not. Because they don't even want to promote what they're doing over there. I don't know how they're going to respond to it. They may want to show Charlie getting fried when he tries to harm them. You know, that may show up. Look what they did to Charlie, and just try to work up a frenzy to get him mad. Your guess is as good as mine. The point is, this is a revelation of Jesus Christ, and these 2 witnesses are serving him, and he's still trying to reach his people, Israel, with a prophetic message. That's what you're really seeing here.
How many Jews do you think are named Charlie?
In America, there may be a lot.
Yeah, but they won't be here.
Well, they may be over in Israel by then. I don't know.
Maybe we'll try to send Antifa over them to stop them.
But it's not just going to be Jews attacking. It'll be Gentiles. So there will be a Charlie out there that wants to get them. Okay? And what did you say, Jim?
I'm just thinking we could send Antifa over there to take care of them.
Yeah. Kill two birds with one stone.
Watch it.
Yeah. So, sorry, we have 5 minutes. So they've been told, commanded to ascend, go up, and they did. What happened to the witnesses? They went up into heaven. Why? And why in the cloud? As far as I can tell, it just paints it as a very literal, physical ascension from the earth. What did their enemies do at that point? They beheld them or watched them, whatever your translation may be, to find this word, different from the one that they were doing earlier, which was the word what? I just lost it already. They observed, they looked. They're going to look at their dead bodies. This is a different word. 2334 means what? To look at, gaze upon. Okay, a little slower so I can catch them.
To view attentively.
To view attentively.
To gaze upon?
Gaze upon, again, a stronger form of that. This word is where we get the word theater, the Greek word. Theoreo. It means to view as spectators. You're viewing with a great interest, contemplating. They're staring at him going, what happened?
Checking it out.
They're probably looking at the ground. They're making sure there's nobody really there. What is going on? These guys have gone up. So what happened that very hour that kind of God sends along, again, to give you the physical confirmation that something major just took place regarding property? There was a great earthquake. Where? Jerusalem specifically, because how do we know that? 1/10 of the city falls. That word means to what? Was destroyed, to fall into ruins, fall down to the ground. The earthquake took it down to the ground, 1/10 of the city. That is a major earthquake. And Jerusalem, I don't know how big it is today. I have never checked that. It's not a small city. It's pretty good size. And so the next one, what happens with the people?
7,000 people were killed in the earthquake.
Okay, so 7,000 people went down with those buildings or whatever they were around. And the result of that? The rest were terrified and gave glory to the God of heaven. Too many commentators think this means what? They got saved. That's not what it means. They're terrified, they're startled, they're scared spitless, and they gave glory. That word, doxology, we use in our worship services, but the word doxo, what does it mean besides giving glory? Recognition, credit. They acknowledge that this happened from God. That's what they're doing. And it says the rest. Who are the rest? Rest of who? Potentially the people in Jerusalem who saw this. Okay, so if 7,000 died with 1/10 of the city, What's the implication doesn't mean everybody died in that tenth,
Right.
but you're talking about at least 70,000, figuratively speaking, and maybe many more, and maybe many have already fled out of Jerusalem at this point.
Where do you
Jim?
get 70?
I'm just going from 7,000 with a tenth of the city to 10 times gives me 70,000 in the city.
I see
But
what you're saying.
only 7,000 died. You could have had another 50,000 in those buildings that didn't die. So I'm just playing with numbers to kind of get you the picture that we're talking about a great number of people. The rest are terrified and are giving glory to God. They're recognizing Him. I don't think this is salvation. This is not saying that they're repentant. They're not saying there's any conversions here. There is nobody giving thanks to God that He protected them. There's no indication that they're worshiping Him. They're just crediting Him with what just took place. God did this.
So I see these commercials that God is calling all these Jewish people back to Jerusalem.
You see
from
commercials
around
like
the
that?
world.
Well,
I haven't seen those.
not commercials, but
Well, I don't know if it was
documentaries about
documentary.
the
Okay.
Bible and that they'll be called back to.
That's not happening yet.
But I also saw a documentary on not just the Jews are starting to go back, but so are other people.
Well, there's Gentiles fleeing there because we knew one that told us he was going to Jerusalem so he could flee into the wilderness to be protected. I thought that was pretty smart of him, but he didn't stay there long and he came back home. I don't know what happened. But he doesn't say just Gentiles are protected. I mean, Jews out there, it could be Gentiles mixed in with them that are believing the same thing. But going back to your initial question or point, you said that they're being encouraged. Too many people are taking prophecy. If you go back and look at Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, especially those three, Isaiah, Jeremiah, when they're called back to the land, it's a time of peace. It's a time of righteousness. It's a time when they will never suffer again, using my word. That is not what's happening today.
Yeah.
There's many of them fleeing out of panic, thinking that maybe Jerusalem they can at least defend themselves because nobody else is going to defend them.
Basically what we said.
And now the Democrat Jews in the United States are realizing that even the other Gentile Democrats are turning on them. They don't have friends here, even though they're liberal as can be, and they voted liberal in recent elections. They're godless, they're sinful, they're unrighteous. So that's the reality of what's going on today. But you've got to read the Old Testament prophets. Pick a book, take a chapter a day, take down notes, and pick something. I'd gone in before and just picked out one or two things that I wanted to note every time I saw it. And then it stands out on the page when I'm looking for it. I'm reading a chapter, okay, what happened with this, this, and this? And those things stand out. Sometimes I yellow them, sometimes I put them on a separate piece of paper. But just notice what he says about the Jews back in the land. It's the latter part of Isaiah. 1 to 39 of Isaiah is Isaiah and Judah is in big trouble in the book of Isaiah, 1 to 39. Chapter 40 starts off, comfort, oh comfort ye my people. And 40 to 66 is Israel or Judah being comforted by God. And that's where you see a lot of the things that are going to take place. But Malachi talks about some of it. Some of the other minor prophets talk about it. It's scattered around. Zechariah will talk about some of it. So you got to read them and look it up. And what they prophesied has not happened yet. All these people in the 70s were all making documentaries about Israel's back in the land. They were wrong. There was a remnant that was back, and the majority of them are not following God, let alone Jesus Christ.
And that was not the land that was promised.
No.
That was just a portion.
Yeah, little small portion is what they're in. When they get the land, they're going to get the land. So you have to look at some of those things and realize, as much as we want to believe that Israel's in a better place right now, until they submit to Jesus Christ as their Messiah, they're in big trouble. And Satan's manipulating them. So, any other questions as we close off? Number 25. We only got about 35 more to go, 37. You're getting to halfway. Next one, 26, is the end of chapter 11, but there's even a few more breakdowns, unless I can figure out a way to combine them in the second half. So we close off the book with number 26. So note the things it says there, so you don't want to stone me. I had somebody call me, which is good, I want questions. And they were questioning, they're not here at Bible study, they were questioning how I can say the second half of Revelation is details about the first half. Well, you're going to see some of those next week when it closes off. You're going to see the events of the very end of chapter 11. They are the seventh bowl. And you'll see them tie together as you look into that. Because the seventh trumpet is the seven bowls. All right? But don't trust me. Dive in. The seventh trumpet contains the seven bowls. Wham, 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 and they close up. And then you see it wrap up both in the end of chapter 11 and the end of 16. You see those things come together. Let's pray. Father, there's a lot here. I thank you for each one that's been coming. I thank you for their faithfulness. I pray that you would reward them with understanding, with comprehension that sticks, with a greater faith, a greater trust in you, less fear, a realization of who wins the war, and yet give them, each of us, a heart of compassion for the lost. Or for a gentleman I shared a tract with the other day, that he's not hard, he's not against you, he just doesn't know your son. And those are the people I keep looking for that may be open. And pray for him even right now, Father, that you would draw him to yourself. Give me and others an opportunity to share the gospel and to you convict him of sin. So use us to make a difference in this world, even as it gets darker and darker. May our light just shine that much brighter because of Jesus. And we thank you in his name. Amen.